Hey guys, what's up? It is week 447. I have some reviews for you. It's the day before Thanksgiving. I'm reviewing this. I'm doing this video a little early, so happy Thanksgiving. If your question didn't get in, please just ask it next time. I apologize. But yeah, let's hop into the reviews here. And I got one that I've been very excited to see get a nice release stateside here. And this is Pupi Avati's The House with Laughing Windows from 1976. Arrow did this movie justice. Nice, beautiful 4K set here. Multiple commentaries, a feature-length documentary with interviews from the director amongst a bunch of other people. So really great stuff here. So The House with Laughing Windows. Pupi Avati is a director, as the special features, supplemental features talk about. He doesn't have the name recognition in the States that he even does in Italy. You know, he continued to make movies because he never got pigeonholed in the horror genre. But House with Laughing Windows is a rural giallo. Really creepy, genuinely great film. That it's one of these movies that a lot of gialli are more like crime or psychological. A lot of them are horror films, and I would say 100% House with Laughing Windows is a horror film. It has a gothic taste, and the reveal and all that stuff is just dark, and the way it's shot, the music, the reveals, everything about it is pretty much a horror film. And stuff like Deep Red would be most definitely a horror film. And other ones, you know, a lot of them are horror. You can debate back and forth. It depends. All depends what you feel is a horror film. But The House with Laughing Windows follows a painter who is hired to kind of restore this Fresno that is in this church, and it's been covered up, and it's supposed to be a classical kind of painting, and they want to restore it. And it was done by a famous local painter who is kind of infamous, I should say infamous, who has kind of a strange kind of past, and it's all tied in with his family. And they're just incredibly bizarre kind of people in the history of this town. Everybody about this town in the very beginning, and I don't want to sound cruel when I say this, but they kind of go in the small little village, and they're showing some of the, you know, the town people, and they all look a little odd, maybe have some slight deformities and that kind of nature. It reminded me a little of something like, you know, Calvaire, or it definitely has that rural quality. I'd say even Don't Torture a Duckling is the number one rural giallo that comes to my mind. But this also has the aspect of a mystery that I love, figuring out the mystery, which all of them do. But it also has the art horror, where somebody is, you know, revealing a painting or restoring a painting or something. Art is directly tied in with horror, which is something that Dario does so well with, you know, Bird with the Crystal Plumage has one of my favorite shots when they're looking in the painting and they pull out and the killer's looking at the same painting. That's just a brilliant scene. But yeah, this one also, the horror is directly tied in with the painting. It is definitely a mystery. And when it's revealed, you kind of learn a lot about the movie. This is also a movie where the reveal is shocking and crazy, but it's not one of these left field reveals. It's pretty much hinted at. You can get there, not everything maybe, but you can get to most of it, and it makes sense. And the final reveal kind of has that almost like shock, that gut punch, in kind of in a vein of Don't Look Now. I kind of had the same feeling with it. I love the music, although it's more, it's not like a big score. It's like this creepy underlining score that accompanies the movie and the actions, but I think it's brilliant. Lots of good characters in here. That are, you know, kind of well established and picked off. It kind of goes towards the end. The movie does follow a lot of mystery and intrigue and all that kind of stuff like that. And the body count starts to kind of pile up towards the end of the film. It also has that interesting idea where the person who comes to restore the Fresno is an outsider, right? He's somebody that doesn't belong in this rural town, and although they've invited him in, he still feels like he doesn't belong, and you have this kind of weird isolation and feeling. Yeah, I thought this was a fantastic movie. I thought it looked excellent. It's also pretty horrific, and it has its scenes of gore and violence that I think are pretty effective. 76 was not necessarily, it's not in the heyday of the giallo anymore, right? I would say that 70 to 72 is like the strong time when we have so many and many after, you know, Dario's successful movies. And of course, it was a genre that started in the 60s, maybe even before that. With elements of it. But this is a fantastic release. I'll get into the kind of special features a bit here. So we have two commentaries. The first one is with critics Alexandra Heller-Nicholas and Josh Nelson, and these two kind of focus a lot about, they're going kind of like analysis of the movie and how a lot of these things pertain to the historical context of what's happening here. This town used to, you know, house Nazis, and that plays into like the outsider quality and the fascism which is in there and all that kind of stuff. Like, good commentary, interesting commentary. And then we also have a commentary, a brand new one by Eugenio Ercolani and Troy Howarth. This one's one's also really good. Talks a little bit more about the players in the film and the history of the film and its impact, and Pupi Avati as a director and how he's regarded and all that kind of stuff. Both great commentaries because they go well together because they're not the exact same thing. They do cross paths a bit, but it's not 100% the same stuff. Pain and Screams, a brand new feature-length documentary on the film directed by Federico Cadio, featuring interviews with co-writer director Pupi Avati, co-writer Antonio Avati, his brother, assistant director Cesar Bastali, actors Lino Copigliacci, it's going to be hard for me, Capoliciano, Chio, sorry about that, Francesca Marciano, Giulia Pizzarani, and Pedro Brambilla. Production designer Luciana Morsetti, assistant camera operator Tony Sacramuzza, sound mixer Enrico Blasi, and Emmanuel Tagalati, that's the son of assistant production designer Othello Tagali. There's tons of people in here. They talk about pretty much all the big players, all the actors, all the actresses, how it was working with Pupi Avati, how they regard the film, how they revisited the film, the kind of inner cliques within the group of people and all that kind of stuff, where it was filmed. And it ends beautifully with the lead actor talking about working with Pupi Avati later on, and he says something about, hey, we were here 50 years ago, and it seems like it's just a great little lovely line that only the Italians could deliver in such a way. So a great little supplemental film with the release. And we also have La Casa El Sola, a brand new visual essay by critic Chris Alexander. Shows a lot of appreciation for the film, compares it to stuff like Cannibal Holocaust, and saying that it's such an excellent film, but it also hurts to watch, and I can see that. It is an unpleasant film, especially the opening credits. Right when I put this in and the opening credits came on, I was like, oh boy, this is something that's going to be a little bit more harsh than your typical giallo. And then we also have The Art of Suffering, a brand new visual essay by Kat Ellinger. And I think she does kind of an approach where she kind of looks at other films and stuff, and she's more in line with the first commentary with Josh Nelson and Nicholas on there. But different stuff, good stuff too. Sorry about that. And then we have the Italian trailer, Reversible Sleeve, original newly commissioned artwork by Peter Strain, double-sided sold-out poster, illustrated perfect bound collector's booklet featuring writings by Matt Rogerson, William McKay, Alexa Canis, Anton Bittel, and Stefano Bashirari, and an excerpt from the original production note. So, an excellent movie. That it was one of my, half a dozen horror movies that I've been meaning to watch for years. I had the old DVD. But I held off, hoping for something gorgeous like Arrow would do, and they do not disappoint. A wonderful 4K, looks spectacular. It's really well done, and it was a lesser film, according to Pupi Avati. He didn't think it was a very big film. He didn't think it was a very important film in his career, and it's the funny things that do last. Horror fans and genre fans, they will keep alive any horror film or any film in that genre, and that's why we still have all these films coming out that are pretty much obscure in when they came out, but now everybody is clamoring for them, and they get new life and new appreciation. And this is one that I think that Pupi Avati would be surprised how popular this is amongst horror fans in the States, and I've always heard great things about it, and I honestly think that it held up well. I think the acting's great. I felt pathos. I felt pain for the characters in here, honestly. There's things that happen to characters that made me kind of sick and ill. And the reveal is outrageous. There's a couple outrageous reveals, but you're so invested and it's so creepy, and the people who are behind the thing are genuinely horrifying, so it really works. And I like the idea that, just because you may not be the actual perpetrator doesn't mean that you're not, I wouldn't say accomplice, but somewhat in that kind of vein, you know what I mean? You're partially responsible for it. But spectacular release from Arrow, looking to be one of my favorite releases of the year, along with my Sato set and this Shaw Brothers Volume 4 set. Some great ones. I'd have to look back all the stuff that was released that I watched, but there's tons of great stuff this year. Okay, guys, we are continuing the Shawscope Volume 4 here, and we got 6 titles to talk about here. And the first one up, we're going to talk about a movie that I have covered before, and I'm talking about Bewitched first because I'm going to do the Hex movies all back to back. But Bewitched from 1981, I would call it probably the grossest Shaw Brothers movie of all time, and I mean that as the utmost compliment, being the crazy son of a bitch that I am. But Bewitched here, the director of this, I believe he's the one who did all the Hex films as well. I get him mixed up because I think he did Boxer's Omen. He's just one of these. There's like 3 or 4 of the Shaw directors that do a lot of of the horror-oriented films, and they pretty much did all of them. And this director here did a spectacular job. He did Boxer's Omen for sure, but with Bewitched here. So Bewitched, yeah, this one looks great, remastered. I had the old 88 films one, but I do think this is an improvement. The story is fairly typical, as I talked about last week, how a lot of the characters will kind of visit these Southeast Asia countries, and it's kind of like this xenophobic kind of weird kind of deal, and a lot of the ancient cultures come from there and whatnot, and the mythology and religions and things like that, witchcraft, if you will. And they visit these things, and they get a curse or a spell and whatnot. So what we have here is this playboy kind of guy who, as a kid, he maybe seemingly has a girlfriend. It's never really clear if he's visiting a prostitute later or what, but he ends up going down to Thailand because he wants to, he's basically going down there to meet some women and party and whatnot. And he meets this girl who seems to genuinely like him, and he gives her a bunch of money to take him around town, and he's trying to sleep with her, and she gives all the money back. They end up sleeping together, and she says, "Come back, promise me to come back," and he actually says he will, and he doesn't. And he ends up getting this curse. The movie doesn't actually open up with this, but this is the general plot. The movie actually opens up with a brutal discovery of a body, and we have this kind of pin in the head. And it is really grotesque, maggots crawling over the body, and this leads to this guy who's cursed arrest because he's committed this murder. And he basically pleads with the detective on the case, who's Melvin Wong, who's a classic actor in Hong Kong films, and always plays a police officer type. But he pleads with him and tells him, "I'm cursed, I need your help." And Melvin Wong is the one who kind of goes down here and discovers the story, while we get kind of flashes into this guy's story. He tells the whole thing to him. But the movie is basically just to showcase all these different kind of curses. There's all sorts of nasty kind of crazy curses, which will lead you to basically being impotent, to having maggots pour out of your stomach, and you basically turn into a giant ballooned gross thing. And it just gets grosser and grosser and grosser, including real life animal cruelty, of course. At the time, it's definitely in there. But this movie does all build up to the showdown between the shaman. The funny, a good shaman and a bad kind of witchcraft kind of guy. The funniest thing in this, a monk, I will say, and a bad kind of black magic guy. But the funniest thing about this is, so the woman who initially put the curse on him, right? She feels like she's been used, which she has, and the guy's an asshole. But she puts this curse on there, and other people suffer for it, to the point where they start cursing other people to make sure this curse stays. And it's just like, I can't imagine someone having the vitriol to go through all this, these kind of ideas to keep this curse on this guy when other people's lives are dying, and tons of stuff like that. But the kind of final showdown involves this little wacky puppet bat, which is fantastic. There's a commentary on here. I think it's James Munge. It's pretty good commentary. The problem with a lot of these is these movies all share a lot of the same people in them. So they'll be like, this actor and that, and this director did that, and they go down the line, and they do some start sounding the same to a bit, but it does kind of talk about other black magic films and whatnot, including Black Magic 1 and 2, which cannot be not discussed when you're talking about Bewitched, because they're definitely the precursor to this one. One of my favorite Shaw movies. I love this one. I think the director also did Corpse Mania, which is an excellent one that Vinegar Syndrome put out on 4K. Great movie. But yeah, we are getting some really cool stuff. I'm so happy to see the latter day kind of end of an era. Shaw Brother movies get released, the wackiest ones, the weirdest ones, the most violent, crazy horror films, which is totally my jam. And I'm revisiting a lot of these. This set, actually, I think I've seen all 6 of the ones I'm covering this week, but I'm very happy to watch them as a second viewing. Kind of helps me grow some love for them for sure. Okay, we're moving into Hex now, from 1980, from the same director here. Now, Hex was one of the first Shaw horror movies I think I saw for 1980. And I must admit, the first time watch, I was a bit disappointed, because a lot of these Shaw films have this element where they'll build up a lot of supernatural, crazy kind of stuff, and you're very invested at the kind of scary stuff going on. And then they kind of pull the rug from underneath you. And I always found that a little disappointing in a couple of the movies. But as I'm kind of used to it, to a certain extent, and I've grown kind of accustomed to it, I don't really hold that against the film anymore. But Hex, this one is the most serious of the Hex films. I think the first one and the second one were both 1980, and I think the third Hex movie, Hex After Hex, is 1982. But we're going to talk about all 3 of them, but we're just going to brush into the first one here. So the first one is a bit different, a little bit more dark, and it has this really great kind of look to it. I love the set of this one. So often do you see a lot of the Shaw Brother movies, and they're so kind of brightly lit, or they have the kind of same sets and the same big kind of, places they fight and have their showdowns at the very end. And this one, it seems like it might even be the same place, but it's so darkly lit and kind of like in a gothic kind of deal here. So we kind of go over this family and how they've fallen, and we get their history and how this is a period piece. They've fallen on bad luck, and the lone survivor of this family had to marry, and this guy is just a piece of crap. And after they lost their money, he's treated her nothing but poorly. He's an alcoholic. He goes out, he beats her, he's chased away every last maid that they've had, while she is suffering from an ailment and dying, basically. So an old maid comes in, the daughter of an old maid comes in and says, listen, I want to stay here and help you out because I feel indebted to you. So they end up kind of taking care of her a little bit, but this drunkard of a husband's going to chase her off until what happens is, in a series of really messed up things, the husband actually gets murdered in a really graphic, kind of awesome way. But yeah, his body somewhat disappears, and the sick woman starts to kind of lose her mind, and you're not really sure exactly what's going on until, you know, the kind of full cards are revealed. And I don't really want to spoil anything, but this movie definitely has a couple little twists in here. Visually, there's some great scares, some ghosts, and I think that they are really set up some genuinely good stuff in here with lighting and, you know, technique and all that stuff. There's these weird kind of side elements that are comedic, of course, like the people who are moving the furniture are just the classic Hong Kong characters who's like, hey, I'm a cross-eyed bozo, and I'm an overweight guy who's going to keep falling over and doing all sorts of stupid stuff, or a weird pervert. And they basically are just the guys getting scared by the ghost, and it's probably supposed to be funny. It's silly and it's okay, but it does feel a little out of place because I feel like a lot of this one is a little bit more serious and dark and tone. But overall, I think Hex is pretty good. There is no commentary on Hex, but I enjoyed it. I don't know. I think it's probably... Is it the best of the series? Probably technically the best, I think. I think most people would dig this one, or more serious horror fans would enjoy the first Hex. But visually, there's some great stuff. In particular, the ending, there's a wild spell that is supposed to kind of break the curse, where it's just this woman completely nude dancing around. Yeah, and it gets a little graphic at the end there, too, in terms of violence. But yeah, Hex, cool movie. Okay, the next one here on the disc, we're going to talk about Hex versus Witchcraft, made the same year. Pretty much an unrelated to the Hex, the first film, but I think 2 and 3 are more related. So this one, I'm going to be fairly brief with it because it's a rather goofy film. The star of the film is actually James Yai, I can't think of his name, but... I won't pronounce it correctly, so I'm not going to do it. But I know him from the movie from 1983 called Red Panther, where he plays a police officer, and he's really goofy and silly. And he kind of plays a similar character in this. He's a bumbling moron. He's pretty much a scum guy, a scummy piece of shit. And in the very beginning, he keeps gambling all his money away. And he owes this guy so much money that the guy says, listen, if you let me sleep with your wife, I'll erase your debt. So he says, okay, but I got to get her really drunk. So he treats her really well. One night, gets her really drunk and tries to sneak this guy into the room. It doesn't go all as planned, and this guy who's attempting to sleep with his wife gets his private parts damaged beyond repair. So this puts him up at odds with this guy, and while he's kind of at his lowest and he's worried, trying to kill himself, he ends up marrying a ghost. This guy comes in and says, hey, I'll give you all this money if you marry a ghost. This guy has nothing to lose. He doesn't believe in it. So supposedly he marries this ghost. And this is kind of where he realizes that this ghost, actually is there. And she starts to help him win in gambling tournaments and all that kind of stuff. And that's kind of the headline of this movie, is it all ends in this big kind of gambling scene, which is kind of like silly and goofy and rolling and trying to... It's not what is that, Mongong? I can't think of the kind of the poker-like dominoes-looking game that is incredibly popular in Hong Kong. But yeah, that's kind of the whole big main set piece at the end here, is this kind of gambling thing, which is common. Gambling films are fairly popular in Hong Kong. There's quite a bit of them. I think any of the one, what is that? The Stunning Gambling Men, or Stunning Gambling, I can't think of it, but it was recut into a really ridiculous movie. But gambling is a huge part of the Hong Kong films, and this is element which is ghost and comedy, and this is more strictly a comedic film, but it's fun. No special features on this one. Maybe there's on the last disc, I think, has some special features kind of covering these movies, but this one is probably the weakest of the 3 of the Hex films, I think. But it's overall okay. I did grow a little bit more appreciation from it on the second watch. Okay, and finally talking about the final Hex film, Hex after Hex. This actually starts Toad from the Five Deadly Venoms here. He's the kind of muscle guy. At the end of the second Hex, we learn that the ghost wife kind of likes muscle guys, so we see this muscle guy moving in, and I guess Toad is supposed to be the character, same character, different actor. He comes in, and he ends up being kind of tricked into marrying or dating this kind of ghost woman, and she doesn't let her identity be known. But this one is an odd one. It's self-referential where they'll mention Shaw Brothers. Somebody gets branded with the Shaw Brothers logo, and the little theme music plays, and somebody says, must be a good movie. They're kind of referencing Shaw and all that kind of stuff like that. But anyways, Toad gets a job as kind of like a stuntman working it for Shaw Brothers, and he's getting beat up too bad. They're not paying him very much, which is probably true for a lot of the actors at the time. But his girlfriend ends up getting him a job working at this office where the guy is an absolute piece of crap. If you fall asleep, if you do anything, he basically boots you out on the street and fires you. And one day he, has this poor old man almost work till he's incredibly sick, and he ends up firing him, and he commits suicide. This makes Toad incredibly angry. So this whole movie has this weird kind of like housing crisis because the owner rents and builds like apartments and stuff. He's just a sleazebag horrible person, but he's also incredibly greedy. So this ghost wife decides to play a trick on him and makes him kind of lose his riches. The end set piece in this movie is actually really brilliant, where we have this giant statue being controlled in this nice witchcraft fight, which I absolutely thought was excellent. The idea that the statue pukes up all these gold coins and has a name that seems to be somebody of popular reference in Hong Kong. I'm not necessarily sure. That's definitely a cultural thing, or maybe I missed something on the character. But the ending is also funny and goofy, and the whole movie is entirely lighthearted. Has some bizarre Star Wars references, including like a puppet Yoda. But overall, Hex after Hex, I think, is better than the second one, and probably on the par with the first one, although they are completely different movies. So I just have a eclectic taste of weird shit that I like. So I wouldn't say that if you like the first Hex, you're going to like the third Hex, or vice versa. But hey, I enjoyed this one as well. Okay, the next couple of films here, we're first going to talk about The Bat Without Wings from 1980, which is somewhat of a horror film. I watched it for 1980, and I did enjoy it. This time around, I enjoyed it more. This is actually by the director who did Magic Blade, which is an exceptional movie with T. Long, and Intimate Confessions of a Chinese Courtesan, who I absolutely love that movie too, so he has a couple really big ones. The Bat Without Wings is an insane movie. So we kind of set this up that there was this kind of legendary villain called the Bat Without Wings who used to take women and rape them and kill them and whatnot. And all these heroes came to stop him, and all of them died except two. And they're kind of legendary people in this way. So then, of course, we fast forward 5 years later, and somebody pops up and says, hey, I'm the Bat Without Wings, and kills this group of people. A bunch of people go to hunt them, and it turns out that there's a bunch of people looking for this lost gold and these bat swords. And the reason that people wanted to stop the Bat Without Wings in the first place is he had these kind of kung fu or these martial arts kind of books that people were interested in, and he was going to turn them over the wrong hands. It gets very convoluted and very complex, and there's a lot of these characters that are popping in and out. But the main kind of three are after the Bat Without wings, and they're kind of after him to try to figure out where he is. And there's a bunch of plot twists and all sorts of wildness and weird characters coming in and out. But the beauty of this movie is that I don't want to necessarily spoil it, but the people that were once heroes no longer seem to be that. You know what I mean? These people of legend are not necessarily who their namesake is anymore. And I thought that was brilliant, and that kind of aspect there. Sam Deegan does a commentary, shows a lot of love for this movie, goes down all the key players, talks about the weird lighting and how horror related this is, and I would agree with it. This one doesn't have as much crazy lighting as the next one, but this one is wild and weird, and I think it hits into the horror adjacent kind of category. I think the ending is brilliant, and we kind of have the dual Bat Without Wings stuff, and I think that stuff's really well done. Overall, I think this is a good one and a weird one and an entertaining one, and I would recommend it if you like more so the wuxia and martial arts movies. This one is more that than horror, but it does have its horror kind of counterparts as well. Maybe one of those mixed with like the Human Lanterns. I say mixed in that kind of level, but yeah, excellent movie nonetheless. I would recommend it, checking it out. Okay, the last one we're covering today is going to be the Bloody Parrot from 1981, and this is probably one of the weirdest in the set. Kind of convoluted in the same kind of way Bat Without Wings is, where you have numerous characters popping in and out just for 5 minutes, just to die, just announcing who they are, and then half of them aren't dead, half of them come back at the end. But the Bloody Parrot is some sort of mythical thing. In the very beginning, we have a monkey's paw kind of story here, where this treasure has gone missing, and this family has the Bloody Parrot, so he wishes for the treasure to come back. His son actually dies, so he wishes for his son to come back, and this Bloody Parrot kind of seems to be kind of not on the level. So the wife and them get into this giant battle, and the whole family ends up being killed in that aspect. We kind of fast forward, and we have all these characters kind of looking for this Bloody Parrot, trying to figure out what the hell is going on and who is everyone. And we have these kind of two lead kind of guys going in the investigation, and one of them is killed in the very beginning. And as this guy is traveling, taking his friend's coffin back to where he belongs, he gets in a lot of these kind of fights with a bunch of these other people. But this movie has this weird thing where it will keep introducing all these characters, and they'll reveal who they are, and people are not who they seem, and people who are supposed to be dead are not dead. But it gets pretty wild and pretty crazy, and I know it's not necessarily a horror film, but the incredible violence in here and the weird kind of supernatural elements, I would put it into kind of the horror kind of adjacent category, and probably would consider it a horror movie. Like, we have these kind of weird burned out people that are like these kind of zombies. We have a swamp full of snakes and ends up eating somebody completely to death, and the ending is also really dark and kind of twisted, although it ends on kind of a light, silly note. Bloody Parrot and Bat Without Wings are both movies that I would recommend that you watch just to see for yourself, and make sure you pay attention. Even if you pay close attention, you still might be like, especially in Bloody Parrot, you're like, who's this guy? Who's he back from? And you might be a little confused on who all the key players are. It's like when you read like this big novel or something and it has 100 characters in it, but and they're like, you watch the movie and like all the characters are in it, but they're like half of them are in it for 5 seconds, and it kind of reminds me of that, reading, like, seeing a movie and then like reading the book and not knowing everybody and whatnot. It's kind of like a confusing little element like that. Sam Deegan also does a commentary on here. She loves this one. She gives it a lot of praise, and I could see exactly why. It's a lot of fun. Points out characters and actors from other films that she really loves, and points out the character from actually Magic Sword. I think that the Poison Granny is in this as well. She's great in that one. She's my favorite character too. She mentions her being in that, and she's fucking fantastic in that movie. She's pushing like the cart around and killing everybody. But this one has a lot of similarities to that one too. But when I first watched this one, I was a little disappointed because it had that line where it was like, oh, this isn't necessarily supernatural. But then I was like, no, this is great. I was completely wrong about this. But we still have the Fake Ghost Catchers to look forward to, Demon of Loot, Seeding of a Ghost, Portrait of a Crystal, and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. But so far, this is being a spectacular set, one of my favorite releases of the year. Love the Shaw Brothers, and I hope they do another set. Maybe pop in some more of the horror films, like The Psychopath from '78 never had a nice release. There's a couple other ones too that I'd really love to see somebody get a hold of. But yeah, it's a great set so far. Highly recommended. Okay, let's get into those 1983 movies.
I have returned.
Okay. Show me.
Where is the music now? The sound of laughter. There was never laughter.
What's it like?
What's what like?
Screwing a psycho.
What the fuck was that?
It's gone.
Guy blows dead dogs. Just lay it in there. Eat Eat shit and die, Ricky!
Eat shit and live, Bill.
Yeah, Bill, he's a little wet.
31. 32. 32. Year of a man's prime. Loved by many women. He might still learn to swim. 32. Going. Gone.
The kid was cut in half, Arnie. They had to scrape his legs up with a shovel.
Well, isn't that what you're supposed to do with shit? Scrape it up with a little shovel.
One final moment of revenge.
Wondering what's real. All of it is real.
You want to see something really scary?
You bet.
Really?
Yeah.
Get the video, Joe! Long live the new flesh!
No choice but to kill the son of a bitch.
Living one's entire life in a state of fear. It is all I have ever known. Fear.
Are you ready?
Okay, go ahead. What are you doing?
Okay, the first 1983 one is kind of a doozy here, and I didn't really know what to expect on this one. I've been following Paul Lynch's career kind of a little bit, going through the 80s and stuff. Of course, you know the horror film Prom Night, 1980, and then he had Humongous in 82, and he produced American Nightmare in 83. So I was like, oh, Cross Country, one he directed. I know that it never really got a nice release. You know, company kind of like they were going to distribute it in MGM, and it fell kind of through and whatnot. He talks a little bit about this in the American Nightmare commentary and special features. But this one, Cross Country, this is a thriller, psychological horror film, crime film. And this opens up, and it has this kind of underlining, kind of really, I don't know, impending kind of doom music. And the opening reminds me a lot of Henry, or not the murders, but it's close. You see these kind of like background pictures of the wall with blood on it, and you have this kind of underlining music, and it reminds me of, you know, the scenes where they're showing all the bodies in Henry. I'm like, this is just really setting up something unnerving completely. But we actually do see a murder, and the person seems to be stabbed several times, and it's really graphic, and the low quality, I was watching it on like a VHS rip or something along those lines, just made this just pop out, and it was just well done, and seemed very gritty, and seemed very natural, and just unpleasant. I was like, oh, this is kind of what I'm looking for in this kind of movie. And this is a road movie, a road horror film. And we follow this aid agency guy and ad agency guy. But he is knew this woman, and we know that right off the bat. And he's just got this cold stare about him, this dead stare, and all signs point to he's got to be the killer. So he's in the strip joint, kind of, you know, drinking away, something. And this woman approaches him and starts talking to him, and he ends up getting in this fight. And when he comes to, he offered to drive cross country with her. When he comes to, there's another guy in the car, and they're driving cross country. And he's like, "What the hell is going on here?" And it doesn't seem right. Everybody in here seems suspicious and seedy, and not who they say they are. At the same time, we also have this police investigation with Michael Ironside, third role of 1983, does a spectacular job with this one, as kind of just this exhausted cop who's got this wife who's, you know, has a really bad major illness, and he's constantly back and forth between this job and everything like that. But there's this great scene where he's interviewing somebody, and he's sitting back like this, like, and his face doesn't change at all, where he's like, and the guy's asking him a question. He's like, "Oh, okay." And it's like he's like grilling him, but the guy's replying, and he's just like kind of going back and forth. You can just tell he's exhausted, and it's not overacting too. And one of the great exhausted cop roles, if you will. But the beauty of this movie is there's a lot of sexual tension, and there's a lot of sexual stuff happening in the movie, and you don't really know where all their sexual politics fit and who these characters are and all that kind of stuff like that. At the same time, you have this kind of like look behind the curtain of the ad agency, kind of like business model and stuff, and the people who are in charge there. And we have this road movie kind of going across country with these characters, and you don't really know who to trust. You don't trust any of them. You don't know who necessarily is the killer, or if there's more than one killer. But the way this thing plays out, I thought was great. And I predicted something pretty pretty dead on, but there's a couple things I did not predict, which I thought were kind of refreshing, and I thought the ending was refreshing, and I thought the music was pretty good too. And also Ray Sager again in the credits here as assistant director, I think, or second unit or something along those lines. Ray Sager from Wizard of Gore, who starred in the Herschel Gordon Lewis movies, and he worked on American Nightmare as a producer, and he worked on this one too. So I'm not the biggest fan of Wizard of Gore. I'm not the hugest fan of Herschel Gordon Lewis, but it's very nice to see Ray Sager out there making some movies or being involved with some movies that I am a fan of. So that's really cool to see. And I never really had a problem with his performance in Wizard of Gore. That wasn't really the problem. But it's just kind of wild that some of these players end up doing something completely different. But yeah, all the other actors are really strong in here too, and they're not like super familiar faces for me, right? Of course, Ironside is. But as kind of a gritty, tired cop, but and he's great in here. Understated performance, not something like where he's like Dale Revick, or even I said it's Richter in Total Recall, which I love, but he's a little bit kind of toned down, and you see his range, how good he is. He can do almost anything. It's just sometimes you get put in those kind of roles where you're like, I'm either a cop or I'm an asshole, but I just like seeing him in these 3 different movies he had this year so far. Being in American Nightmare, which is very similar to Cross Country, but he's also he was in Sins of Dorian Gray, which I thought he was really good in. But yeah, I thought Cross Country was a really nice hidden gem, which I don't hear too many people talk about. But yeah, Paul Lynch, probably my favorite Paul Lynch movie, and he's just kind of I don't love all his movies, but he might be a little underrated honestly in terms of it. And I'd love to see this get a release. It deserves it. Okay, this one from 1983 is an odd one in terms of release. I think it started in 76, took several years to make, and the first release date is listed as 83. Some people say it's 84, some people say it's widely released in 85. I'm not 100% sure what's going on with this one, but this is The Passing. I think this is a Baltimore-made horror film from the Special Features and Understanding. He mentions knowing John Waters and making this kind of with, like some other college kids helping him out and stuff. So this director has done a couple movies. The other movie he did that I know of is Hard from 1998, which is a gay like serial killer kind of film, which I have on DVD somewhere. I've never actually had a chance to watch it. It's never had a kind of a bigger release, but I've heard pretty decent things about it. But this one, The Passing, I went in completely blind. I didn't know much about it. Listed as sci-fi, horror, kind of drama thing, and I thought this was spectacular. It's shot in 16 millimeter, which I love the look of that. It's got that indie quality about it, and being made at the time it was made and how it was made, it has a dangerous quality about it. Not that it's an extremely graphic film, although it does have its graphic moments, but it felt dangerous, had a dangerous quality to it. And I don't want to say it's something like Combat Shock, but in Combat Shock you're watching that movie and you realize anything can fucking happen in this movie, and it does. But this one I kind of 16 millimeter just screams to me, anything can fucking happen, and it might. And this one I would kind of put in line with that. So we open up with kind of this, a brutal kind of gang attack in the alleyway. But pretty soon we're kind of cutting between two stories here. We are following these two old guys. And a lot of that is like this very touching kind of old guy, relationship with these two guys that were war buddies. And they're both old and they're both dying. And they both have kind of different outlooks on life. But it's like a love story, but it's not a sexual love story. It's like a love friendship. And we're also cutting back between this guy who is struggling to like make ends meet. He has a wife and a newborn baby and whatnot. Seems to be a fairly normal person. And those are the kind of the two stories here, and you're wondering how they're gonna come together. So I think that when they were making this, they decided to release the one film, the 28 minute version of the two old guys as its own kind of short, and it works brilliantly. I imagine it's on here, but all that stuff works brilliantly. Like all the old guy stuff back and forth, I thought worked really well. I thought that these are not actors, but he got a great performance out of them, and it just felt real and genuine and touching. And a lot of stuff about old guys kind of talking about getting old, and it's very effective. If you want more from an Academy Award-winning performance, watch Ben Johnson in The Last Picture Show. It's just one of the all-time, hey, I'm getting fucking old and it's sad performances. But yeah, so this stuff is really strong. But what happens is one of the guys decides to sign up for this kind of scientific experiment, and that's kind of where the horror and sci-fi elements come into here. And there's just a couple imagery here where one of the characters' eyes are completely white, and it's actually disturbing and unpleasant. It's like it just was like, oh boy, that kind of shocked me a little bit. But there's some visual trippy effects during this scene. That whole stuff in the scientific experiments is pretty creepy and genuinely well done as well. So The Passing, it's just this kind of drama for a big chunk of it, this kind of relation drama. But then we have this kind of rape revenge little aspect in there that's pretty graphic, and we have this scientific kind of experiment that's pretty graphic, and then we kind of come back to make it all kind of a nice little tragedy that is heartfelt and well done and and low budget enough, and but also effective enough and well done enough to really work. And I thought The Passing was kind of another hidden gem. 2 hidden gems for 83. I hope I don't burn up all my hidden gems and I'm stuck with watching like the bad movies at the very end, but I didn't expect anything out of The Passing. It's a Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray, but very, very entertaining film. As far as the special features, we do have a commentary. It's 2K scan from the 16mm, commentary by director John Huckert, and moderated by Tom Fitzgerald of Exploitation TV. Water Under the Bridge interviews producer, co-writer Mary Mrparka. She tells her little story about, teaching and meeting the director and working with him. Passing time, well, she never really had seen that many movies before this. Passing time interview with cinematographer Richard Chisholm, and he's the one who says, is that Chisholm? That he was in college and stuff and was disturbed by some of the stuff in the film, and they used a lot of the college stuff because he was there. Promotional and art gallery, short films directed by John Huckard, The Water That Is Past, that is the 28-minute version of the old people stuff, Quack, Inmal, and Ernie and Rose. Or is it Ernie and Rose? It might be Ernie and Rose. I'm sorry about that. Might be a little confused. You're probably Ernie and Rose. But reversible cover artwork, English subtitles. Yeah, excellent movie. I would highly recommend checking this out if you like your independent films, and well done. So, good stuff. All right, the Patreon pick here. I decided to go with Who Made Who? Who Made You? Maximum Overdrive 1986, the only film that Stephen King ever directed himself. I absolutely love this movie. This is a childhood favorite of mine. Watched Maximum Overdrive probably 50, 60 times. Was always happy it got a Blu-ray release from the Vestron Collector series here. I was lucky enough to get a slipcover. I didn't pay anything exorbitant for the slipcover or anything like that. But, so here we go. Yeah, this one is based off the short story Trucks from the Night Shift collection, which is very different if you've ever seen it. That was made into a movie later on, which I've only watched parts of. But Maximum Overdrive, produced by Dino De Laurentiis, who produced a lot of Stephen King adaptations and a lot of great films, a lot of wild, weird films. This stars Emilio Estevez, Pat Hingle. It's got Leon Rippey in it, Giancarlo Esposito. There's Lisa Yardley Smith is in here. So it's got tons of recognizable good actors and good faces, and a lot of other character actors pop up in here. Frankie Faison from the Hannibal movies and stuff as well. Very recognizable guy. But yeah, this is just an overall really bizarre, batshit kind of dum-dum movie. Stephen King wanted to make a stupid movie for everybody, and the movie doesn't make any sense. If you try to logically figure it out, it just doesn't really work. Although we're dealing with aliens, so you could say, well, how do you know how aliens work? Whatever. But it's just a weird, bizarre movie. It's the idea of what if all the machines decided to start attacking you, in particular trucks. But yeah, also I should mention that AC/DC does the soundtrack. They made the song Who Made Who for this, and it's my favorite AC/DC song. AC/DC is a band that I heard 10 million times as a kid, and I hit that point in my life where I was like, I never need to hear another AC/DC song again in my life. But rewatching this, it's been a while since I heard AC/DC. I was definitely jamming out to some AC/DC, Who Made Who, Shook Me All Night Long. All the other songs are from old albums, and they kind of put in here. There's a bunch of the songs that pop up in here, Hell's Bells. But they actually use the soundtrack very effectively. And I know that Stephen King was kind of raked over the coals for this movie. Everybody saying it sucks, yada, yada, yada. And I've had friends talk to me about this, and they said, Stephen King's movies are so adapted and they're so serious. But what if Stephen King, all his books were in this tone, in this wild, insane tone? And you're like, it kind of is that. And there's a couple commentaries on here. The one with Michael Felsher and the Stephen King expert kind of talks about, Stephen King having this element of comedy about him, right? And whatnot. And it's definitely in there. And watching this one, Stephen King has his character types. He has, the guy who's selling the Bibles, but he's also a piece of shit, like molesting kind of guy, grabbing the girl's leg. And there's just some really funny moments. You could tell that Stephen King thought it would be absolutely hilarious to make this guy say cocksucker while he's trying to sell somebody a Bible in between. And just that kind of stuff. Like, those are like Kingisms. And it's essentially Night of the Living Dead in a truck stop, right? Being friends with Romero and probably liking those movies and whatnot. But yeah, Estevez is great in this. I've always been a big fan of Emilio Estevez. He was like a king of the mid to late 80s and early 90s. He was everywhere from Young Guns to the Brat Pack and all that kind of stuff like that. So I've always had a fondness for Emilio Estevez, kind of grew up with him. And I think he's really fun in this one. Pat Hingle does steal the show in this. Pat Hingle was in, the Batman movies. He's in, I believe he's the bad guy in Hang 'em High, if I'm not mistaken, in one of them at least. And Quick and the Dead, just a million movies. Always a really strong character actor, and he's fucking hilarious to this as kind of the human baddie in here. Bubba something, Bubba Hitchow. He keeps calling everybody Bubba, even though his name. He's like, hey, Bubba, Bubba, Bubba. Very memorable character. But most of this movie takes place in a truck stop with trucks circling all the wide, weird characters, including a bunch of truckers and people that work there. Another thing noticing on this one is how much I was talking about. Stephen King loves these weird characters. And Jeremy was like, Stephen King loves small town hicks, and half the characters are small town hicks, like the guy stuck in the truck stop and whatnot. It's just weird characters. The waitress in here is her character. She's a recognizable character actress, but I think with like another director, they would have told her to pull back her performance on the "Who made you," but who we made you lines when she freaks out. But Stephen King lets her go like for broke, and it's one of the like insane performances of this movie, if not one of the most insane performances of the 80s. We made you. It's just batshit. Movie's incredibly violent. I know a lot of the stuff was actually cut out. Unfortunately, it's not been reinstated. It's just not really anywhere to be found. The carnage in the beginning of the film, when all the machines kind of go nuts because of the comet overhead, is just I always love that stuff. You know, the drawbridge going up, the machine calling me an asshole, just pure unadulterated chaos, and you get to see what the hell's going on at those glimpses, but you can only imagine what the hell's happening around the world. I always wanted to see what would happen in like a factory, because all the heavy machinery, or anywhere else, man. So many cool things could have been done with Maximum Overdrive universe. And I know like the idea of it is incredibly silly, but there's some really cool, fun stuff about this. And the music score, besides the AC/DC stuff, is definitely inspired by The Entity. When I rewatched The Entity for 82, I was like, man, Maximum Overdrive really went to town with that. But every time somebody's killed or something crazy happened, you hear that. And for some reason, to me, that's also Psycho. But it always stuck in my head. It always stuck in my head and was very effective. I feel like I'm hot coffee talking about this movie. But also love the trailer. Stephen King, completely insane. You want something done right? Do it yourself. Like Ned Flanders on fucking a fucking drug binge. But I love it. You know, this is the kind of Stephen King shit I like. I'm also a huge fan of like Graveyard Shift. I like the weird, crazy stuff. You know, I think that like the capturing the essence of how weird and wild Stephen King can be. And I think Maximum Overdrive is just a blast. It has all these elements in there of Stephen King being crazy in the movie, AC/DC, Dino De Laurentiis, incredible violence, Emilio Estevez, just an oddball film, man. And I think it's the best bad movie ever made. Technically, a lot of people would say it's a bad movie. It's purposely kind of, I wouldn't say bad, because the technical stuff isn't bad, you know? It's not bad movie. It's just a wacky movie. And so that's why I guess I say it's people say it's bad, but I don't want to call it bad. But I think it's like the best bad movie ever. People always like Troll 2. It's like Troll 2 sucks compared to Maximum Overdrive. Troll 2 ain't got AC/DC. It ain't got Pat Hingle with a fucking rocket launcher. It ain't got a kid getting run over by a steamroller. It ain't got a coach getting hit in the balls with a fucking can of pop. But Maximum Overdrive does, and that's why it's great. I know a lot of people don't like it. I understand why. It's completely justified. But I'll die on this hill. I like it. I understand why I like it. And if that makes me a dumber person for it, so be it. Ignorance is bliss. Audio commentary with writer Tony, Magistrelli, author of Hollywood Stephen King, moderated by Michael Felsher, does a good job on all these features. Audio commentary by actor and comedian Jonah Ray and Blumhouse film executive Ryan Turek. This is more of just, not well-researched bullshitting about the movie. Kind of like this. Interviews, Truck Stop Tales, interview with producer Martha De Laurentiis. Enjoyed seeing that. Obviously the daughter of Dino De Laurentiis. Rage Against the Machines, interview with actress Laura Harrington. Honeymoon Whores, interviews with actor John Short and actress Yeardley Smith. Maximum Carnage, interview with makeup effects creator Dean Gates. A Kid in King's Court, interview with actor Holter Graham. The Wilmington Factor, a look back on the filming of Maximum Overdrive, members of the production crew in North Carolina. Talk about the movies made in North Carolina. Dino De Laurentiis produced some Stephen King stuff like Cat's Eye and stuff there. Just kind of a nice little look at filming in kind of a different area that's not New York or Los Angeles. And then Who Made Who, an interview with Murray Eaglehart, co-author of AC/DC Maximum Rock and Roll, talks about where this fit into the oeuvre of AC/DC. And then we have Goblin Resurrects, the restoration of the Happy Toys Goblin, which is the Green Goblin truck head thing. All the interviews are nice, little eye-opening stuff here. Everybody seemed to have a great time on this movie. I love the movie. It's not the best-looking movie in the world being remastered, but it looks pretty damn good, and I'm happy to have it on Blu-ray. And I will watch Maximum Overdrive many more times, and don't be surprised if Maximum Overdrive makes my top 10 of 86, which is a competitive, strong year, but I'm willing to die on the hill of maximum overdrive. Maybe I'm willing to get ran over by a Mack truck or something like that, or get killed by a remote control car, whichever doesn't make fucking sense. Like the sprinklers, why are they going off? Why? But anyways, great stuff, Max Overdrive. Super happy somebody picked it as a Patreon pick. It's a childhood favorite, and it's become an adult favorite. All right, questions, comments, and concerns. Brendan Timmons. When the Shawscope volume was announced, I was hoping for 1 or 2 horror titles, but I could not pre-order it fast enough when I found out that it was the entire set. I finished Black Magic 2 this morning, so I'm right there with you. But by the time you read this following week, I'll probably be miserably behind schedule. Haha. I loved Battle Wizards, such a fun, creative, and colorful film. Sato may have been the most important genre release of the year, but this set has to be my favorite. After wanting to track down some of the prior releases of these movies, it was no-brainer to get a 16-film set that collects so many of the quality movies. Since you're covering this set concurrently to covering 83, now is the perfect time to watch The Boxer's Omen. In my opinion, it's the undisputed king of batshit Hong Kong black magic madness and one of my favorite films of all time. See, the thing about Boxer's Omen is it's in set 2, and it will be discussed, but I'm doing a special video of the Hong Kong Shaw Brothers horror movies with a special guest. And I'm going to have to re-talk about Seating with Ghosts and Portrait of Crystal, which will be fine, but we're doing the 5 Shaw Brother horror films, which is really cool because Boxer's Omen's in Volume 2. Portrait of Crystal is on imprint, and it's in Volume 4, as well as Seating of a Ghost, and it's also on 88, which I have. And then we also have the new Shaw Brothers Volume 8 from Scream Factory that's getting released that has The Enchantress and Ghost Galore. So all 5 are on Blu-ray, which is really wild. So I'm very happy to see all 5 of these for this set. Someone Christ, you did a good job of getting my interest in American Nightmare, but the struggle becomes, do I give in and buy an old-ass DVD Scorpion, out-of-print Scorpion DVD, or do I wait for a boutique label to make it look better and release it again? Do you think anyone might try and get it in circulation again? I'm not sure if the elements are lost or what's going on with it, but it's on YouTube, and there's been a upscaled HD print if you want to check it out first and then buy later. You know what I mean? I normally wouldn't kind of condone that, but if it doesn't have a wide release anymore. And then Audio Love. I remember seeing Gene Davis in The Hitcher. He had a bit part as one of the cops who was trying to apprehend C. Thomas Howell's character. Man, I do not remember him in that. That would be a rewatch. Elk Vomit 88. My movie still hasn't been picked. Fist of Fury. Been in the bag of yours over 6 months now. Yeah, but I know that is for like the patrons. The patrons get to jump ahead if they haven't been picked. It'll get picked. Maybe I'll pick it. Maybe I'll just jump it ahead. I don't know. It's just iffy because I don't want to, the patrons get first above everyone else. So Gray Nunez gives me a smiley face. Thank you. Way up, dude. Thumbs up. Thanks. Beyond's 55. A big issue I have collected now is I only end up watching most releases one time and not repeatedly. I look at my collection, I'm like, yeah, most of these are good films, but I never have the desire to watch most of them again. Feels like a waste. I understand to a certain extent. A lot of the times doing these yearly things really helps me because I'll go through and watch, rewatch, revisit, watch the features and stuff like that. But I do look at a lot of these movies here, especially, some of the ones that are made in the last 10, 20 years, and I think, I'm never going to watch this again, or I'm never going to watch this in general. And I just have them, and I'm like, if there was a way that I can maybe condense a lot of them, you know what I mean, and just not keep them all on display. And I know that's like sacrilege. I would never do it with Blu-rays or classic horror films or any classic films. It's just that some of the ones from a certain period I just don't have the affinity for or the desire to even own as much as I have the desire to own a lot of the the older films. But that's just me in general. And then Bretta Do United FC puts just says HK, as in Hong Kong, I imagine. But yeah, that's all we have for that. But yeah, let's get out of here. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching, and as always, have a good one.
And I finally decided if you want something done right, you ought to do it yourself.